we're talking about providing precious food systems. Why don't we shoot from the mass production end? And because of what's been in the news, topics, ultra processed foods, let's talk about the fact that we still need to process somewhat, but it's really about the business end. I think that causes some of the issues because we have a whole public that's marketed to a certain way because of numbers that have to be hit. If we remove the numbers that have to be hit, the production area is inherently not a bad thing. They're trying to make money. They're trying to make food. They're trying to make a living. They're not trying to make a giant profit.
I was at Private Label Manufacturers Association this week in Chicago, and I was delighted and surprised to see how many producers are, especially smaller producers, are doing the right things. You know, they have clean labels and they're not adding a bunch of extra additives, and they have the farms that are close by that they can tell you about what happens on the farm level. So, you know, I think obviously our idea for scale or volume, you know, into these giant corporations, you know, you lose some of this connection because you're operating at such large scale. And so I think there's almost two sides of the food industry. You know, the one who is doing things already at, you know, how we would want them to be or how we imagine, and then scaling up to this large level, things get missed and you lose that human connection.
Yeah, but you know what? What's interesting, Blake, is I was just in Ottawa, and I'm a Canadian, so I live in Canada. So I went up to where our seat of government is, which is Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, where the Parliament buildings are. And I joined the Canada Organic Trade Association as part of their lobbying summit there in Ottawa. So we have a chance to go out and speak to MPs about things like Canadian organic certification equivalency. So we would have that with the USDA. So the USDA's organic certification would have an equivalency with Canadian organic certification. And then we have 35 countries we can export to, which have equivalency, meaning that the requirements around that certification are exceptionally similar in nature. And so what was particularly interesting about this was someone came up to me after the summit based on a question that I had asked, and the person deeply surprised me about where she worked. She worked at one of the largest cosmetic manufacturers in the world, and we talked about her personal belief system and how that was actually going to change or filter up into the corporation that she was working for. She was the VP of Senior Procurement. And it was very important to her about the stories surrounding the narration around where they were getting their stuff because it mattered to her. And she wanted that to bubble up into the rest of the upper administration. So there's, to your point, there's a groundswell somewhere coming from somewhere. And I feel it in my own soul. I know what it is that is that's not working. There's got to be another way, and it has to get back to nature somehow. So your small producers, I think that's also what they're feeling is nature's tapping on the shoulder and saying, hey, come back. I have lots of good solutions too. Come reinvigorate me as a partner in this, as opposed to just an extractable resource.
And I see it too, even in conventional food and supplements too, is the traceability movement where people, and it starts with the consumer. The consumer is caring what their ingredients are, where they're coming from. We could have never imagined a time where there was this much care around our ingredients. That's trickling up.
That's a positive thing. It's very positive.
Actually, pre-2013, were doing that. They were starting to take video in the like the purple potato field because I was in facility at one point. They were trying to do that and tell the story way back in 2010. And when I was there, they were talking about, oh, we have to source, lemongrass, put in our order with the agricultural farmer 2 years ahead over in Asia because it wasn't grown here, anywhere close to here at the time. And then they had to freeze it a certain way. Then it has to pass through imports, inspections, everything, and meet all the standards. Now, the one manufacturing plant, there was a general manager who used to get absolutely annoyed. Like everything should be like this because he came from that background, from like another branded conventional company background. And he was used to just snapping his fingers or calling procurement and having it come in. And meanwhile, at that time, they were saying, the procurement guy was saying, hey, the whole team was saying, no, farms don't work that way. You got to wait for it to grow, right? And it was an ingredient that was a little bit novel to the United States. That hurt in the end, though. That's part of the problem because, we'd have retailers that said, what do you mean we can't have it now?
When you get an order for more than you can produce or more than you know where the farm is from, you might be happy to buy some product that you don't know where it comes from. And so that's where the problem with scalability comes in, because a lot of farms that, we don't have 3,000-acre farms for peppermint.
And we don't have year-round papaya.
But yeah.
I mean, isn't it, I think the idea that we need to ask ourselves if all things should be available at all times for all people.
I don't think so. From the microbiome science end, I'm going to say particularly, I think from the microbiome science side, I think that people were adapted as much as wildlife were in evolutionary state. And if you don't have certain genes and certain microbiome potential in your system for year-round food, look at the deer. They have to change their diet as soon as cold weather comes around because they have different accents that take over in cold season versus warm season. All mammals do. Okay, depending on our environment, depending on altitude.
But Kroger's not going to stop stocking their produce year round for whatever items they can get, and whether it's from Argentina or.
To your point, Blake, I think that's why your comment there again about the small and medium-sized, more local producers, I think it's an important conversation that continues to need to be had. They seem to be able to be agile enough with enough inner will, whatever that looks like, because it's an emotional thing they're doing. It's almost spiritual too, or something that is driving the decision making at their own expense. Let's remember that. A lot of people are investing a lot of resources, time, and money in order to convert an existing operation to a more regenerative-like operation. Like maybe not certified organic, but a lot of my local producers, like, they say, listen, I can't get the certification. I don't have the right buffer zone, whatever, but come to the farm, just see what I do. And if you show up at the farm, sure enough, if the chickens were in my backyard, it'd probably look a little similar to that, So those eggs,
there's millions of these producers around the world, and if we could just bring what they are able to offer to.
Doesn't solve all the problems, to Judy's point. We have to do Nova 4 processing, Nova classification 4, 1, 2, and 3, they're all pretty safe, those classifications. Nova 4, that really is ultra processed food. We need to contend with what that looks like. There's no easy solutions, true, but reevaluating our conscious approach to food systems invigorates our thinking about how we can do things differently without profit as the only arbiter of success.